genel izleyici kitlesi için uygundur.
Saat Farkı'ndan merhabalar. Farklı ülkelerden konuklarla bölgesel ve küresel meselelere dair farklı perspektiflere yer vermeye çalışıyoruz. Her hafta dünyayı Ekotürk ekranında buluşturuyoruz. Bu hafta Güney Kore'ye uzanacağız. Başkent Seul'e gideceğiz. Malum son zamanlarda özellikle siyasi çalkantılarla adından söz ettirdi ülke. Sıkı yönetim ilan edildi. Yaklaşık 6 saat sonra tekrar çekildi ve Cumhurbaşkanı özellikle bir azledilme süreci içerisinde. Bundan sonrasında özellikle bu sıkı yönetim ilanının ve sonrasında yaşanan siyasi kaosun ülkeye etkileri ne olacak? Ülkenin özellikle dış dünyayla ilişkilerine etkileri neler olacak? Güney Kore, bir yandan Kuzey Kore ilişkileri ne durumda? Güney Kore, ABD, Güney Kore, Rusya, dolayısıyla biraz aslında Güney Kore'yi ve Kore Yarımadası'ndaki sorunları da konuşacağız bu yayında. Seul'e uzanıyoruz. Seul Ulusal Üniversitesi'nden, Seoul National University'den Profesör Doktor Dong-Joon, üniversitenin siyaset bilimi ve uluslararası ilişkiler departmanında öğretim üyesi. Hi Professor, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Well, Professor, South Korean President Yoon shocked the whole world, not just you, not just South Koreans, but the whole world, all of us, by declaring martial law in the country for the first time, I think, in nearly 50 years, referring to anti-state forces and the threats from North Korea. Luckily, it lasted only a few hours and then it was lifted. Now he's facing impeachment. So could you tell us, please, what really happened? Why did this happen in such a stable and mature democracy, and what are the lessons learned?
I'm afraid we have to wait to figure out what was going on and what really happened. But it seems the president did not realize the reality. So it seems his, understanding of reality is quite far away from the real thing. So to me, he does not understand the current situation. It seems he lived in like 1970s, even though the time changed very much. So unfortunately, to me, it is a case of anachronism, so out of time.
Professor, is this discourse, the threats from anti-state forces, threat from North Korea, is correct? And I want to ask, if Yoon is correct and there are North Korean sympathizers in South Korea, can we expect them to incite this violence? Because I have seen some reports suggesting that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un may try to exploit the situation. How real is that threat anyway, even though the thing he did was wrong? But how real is that threat?
To me, there is no concrete sign of violence from North Korea or inside Korea. So it is quite normal right now.
So is it more like the motivation behind that, his own political interests or personal concerns then? What was the real, or what were the likely real motivations behind this gambit he played?
It seems he does not understand the current situation correctly. So his sense, his understanding is quite far away from the reality. So it is my understanding.
But why would he do such a thing? To escape from something, to achieve what, basically? Because many of us still trying to understand. It was a very risky move for his political career as well. So probably he estimated that, the outcome. Still, why would he do that in the first place?
Okay, his current understanding is quite far from the real world. That is the problem. So it is a matter of his understanding of the reality.
Okay, so how is this situation right after the event, Professor? Is life back to normal? What was the reaction from your fellow South Koreans? How is this? How do people feel about the situation of democracy? Because it's a very stable and mature democracy, as I said. Is there any mistrust in the system after what happened?
Yes, so we realized the institutional flow of the South Korean democracy. So basically, there are two mandates in South Korean democracy. One is the president, and the other is the National Assembly. When these two mandates go well, get along, there is no problem. But when the president does not consent from the National Assembly, we may end up in a deadlock. Unfortunately, South Korea reached a deadlock. It is the situation here.
Did you have any similar experiences? Could you tell us more about the modern history of South Korea? Do we have any similar incidences? If yes, what happens later on?
So several times we experienced divided government, the minority president and the majority opposition party. So we experienced many cases, but at the time, president and political leaders, they figure out how to get the consent from the ruling, the opposition party. But unfortunately, in these times, the president antagonized the majority opposition party, and then he did not get a consent from the opposition party. That is the problem. That is the number one source of the problem here now.
So the inner political problems, domestic political problems, or maybe disagreements within the parliament usually cause these kind of problems, or it is apparently it is very rare, because this declaration of martial law was, I think, the first one after nearly 50 years. So domestic problems, inner disagreements within the parliament usually end up how do they fix it usually in your country?
In most cases, it goes through the political process. The incumbent president, the minority incumbent president, tried to get the support from the majority opposition parties. It is how the democracy worked in Korea. But in these times, the incumbent president antagonized majority opposition party, and it was deadlock. Mm-hmm. So it was the first time in Korean democracy history for the incumbent president to utilize the martial law to handle this kind of deadlock.
Have you ever seen such thing in your lifetime, Professor? Personally, was it a shock for you as a political scientist also?
It was shock to me. It was shock to me. It was shock to every citizen in South Korea.
Also, can you give us more information about the President Yoon? How was his legitimacy after he was elected? Did he have any problems? Was there any protests in the country regarding him, his actions? How was his legitimacy before this incident?
So 2.5 years ago, he was elected with popular vote. So he won the majority in the popular vote. Once he was elected, he antagonized the opposition party, and he committed several political mistakes, and his popularity plummeted. His popularity simply go on. Currently, his approval rate is 13%. So it is very poor situation.
Mm-hmm. I see. Professor,
I'm sorry to say.
Yes. Professor, from here, I also want to ask, other than domestic issues, some global, maybe foreign issues as well. Let's start with the global consequences of this martial law gambit, let's put it that way. While the focus has been mainly on Seoul's domestic crisis, there are some reports suggesting that any instability in South Korea might have some major ramifications for the region, for Asia, for South Korea's relations with the US mainly, and also maybe some other areas as well. Do you think this crisis that shook the whole world might have any global consequences, or it will just stay as a domestic crisis, domestic issue?
It will not lead to, global, consequences, but in regional terms, it will change the alliance formation, among United States and South Korea and Japan. So South Korea and Japan have been reliable partner for a long time, especially since 1980s. But unfortunately, South Korea became an unreliable ally. So in this sense, the United States may more focus on Japan as a reliable alliance rather than South Korea. So it will have some regional ramification.
Well, speaking of the alliance then, remember, I will also remind our audience that US President, outgoing President Biden has worked a lot actually to bolster the US partnership with South Korea. And also during his term, there was a historic summit in Camp David, bringing together Japan and South Korea. So now speaking of the partnerships, especially US partnership with South Korea, do you think what will the second Trump presidency bring to South Korea, to this partnership, and to the region, broader Asia?
It will take quite a long time to restore the trilateral partnership, especially United States is not willing to, especially the incoming President Trump. He's not interested in the maintaining strong alliance with South Korea and Japan. So also South Korea, in a certain way, became an unreliable alliance. So it is very hard to maintain the trilateral cooperation among United States, Japan, and South Korea in this area. So there will be some support.
Professor, why do you say it became an unreliable partner? Based on which incidents mainly? Is it only not probably the only crisis you are talking about? There are several factors, because South Korea also fully supported U.S. stance, especially during the invasion of Russia, Russia's invasion in Ukraine. So what did harm this partnership? Why South Korea has become an unreliable partner?
So, since the South Korean democratization, there is a severe competition between the conservative side and the progressive side. So almost each president replaced by a counterpart. So it is very hard to maintain the continuity in the foreign policy of the South Korea. So if your counterpart foreign policy, is not reliable, it means it lost the continuity. So it is very hard to trust your counterpart. So unfortunately, South Korea lost some asset because its continuity in terms of the foreign policy, very weakened in these days.
Professor, during Trump's term, now we don't know, of course, what will happen in the second term, but he was the first sitting US president to enter North Korea in 2019. So how do you think South Korea and North Korea relations will play out during his term this time?
So I expect North Korea and United States, they will be involved in some kind of the negotiation process, and probably two countries may bypass South Korea. If it happens, the relation between South Korea and the United States will be weakened more. So it is my concern.
What about China, Professor? I also want to ask you about China, because the US-China rivalry has also placed South Korea in a very difficult position. And now the return of Donald Trump and rising rivalry, or perhaps worsening Cold War between the US and China, might make this position even more difficult. So what are the expectations from South Korea regarding this US-China rivalry, and how does South Korea view this basically strategic rivalry between the two big powers?
The Sino-US rivalry will go on, and South Korea will be in the difficult position because, in economic terms, South Korea has strong, economic relationship with China, and meanwhile, South Korea has a strong security relationship with United States. So South Korea strained in the strategic rivalry between two countries. But luckily, in these days, in a short term, the China flirted with the South Korea. China gave some concessions to South Korea because South Korea may be a weak hold to get support from, to a weakest link among the U.S. security network. So currently, China tried to give some concession to South Korea, but it is a short-term phenomenon. But in the long term, South Korea still strained in the Sino-US rivalry.
What kind of concessions, Professor? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Economic, and also currently, China gave unilateral visa-free system to South Korea. So currently, South Koreans go to China without visa. Meanwhile, the Chinese, they get this, they need visa to visit South Korea. So it is very rare that China gives some unilateral concession to give any country like South Korea in these days. It's very rare.
What about Japan, by the way? I wonder, is there any similar case with Japan as well after the summit, actually, basically?
I don't think so. I mean, it seems Japan's position is quite stable. So even though the China tried to get some, give some concession to Japan, Japan's position will be very stable. So China would not do that.
Speaking of China, also there is another.
After trilateral partnership, South Korea has been the weakest link.
South Korea has been the weakest link. Interesting. Okay. There is another partnership which is a little bit dangerous, maybe, for South Korea. I don't know how it's seen from there, from Seoul, but North Korea and Russia's partnership is also concerning some people, mainly US and its allies also. And China remains a key partner of both North Korea and Russia. So this partnership, Professor, between North Korea and Russia, and we know that over the past few months, North Korea has sent troops, military support to Russia as well. So how does South Korea view this partnership?
So basically, this relates to the money issue. So currently, if you check the North Korean trade deficit, North Korea experienced the trade deficit. So sending out machinery is one way to get the money. So if you compare the North Korean whole export and the expected return by sending the troop, probably the sending the troop will account around 70% of the North Korean whole export. So it is a big money. So to tackle the trade deficit, North Korea sent workers or mercenaries. So it is a way to North Korean regime survive in handling the trade deficit issue. But more important, there is some speculation that there might be some chance that Russia provides some very sensitive technology to North Korea. It's a big concern. It is a big concern.
For its nuclear program mainly, right?
Nuclear program, especially the submarine and the intercontinental ballistic missile technology, those things.
Also, speaking of North Korea and Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, basically, actually, there's another question I want to ask. The Yoon government, the President Yoon's government previously suggested that deployment of North Korean troops into Ukraine could cause the country to reassess the level of military support it gives to Ukraine, even though it did not so far directly, I think South Korea, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but it did not directly support militarily Ukraine till now. But do you think after following North Korea's sending troops to support Russia, do you think South Korea will reconsider its, or let me ask this way, I mean, it will accelerate its military assistance to Ukraine, do you think? I mean, it will change South Korea's calculations after this decision?
So I do not think so. The United States selected President Trump, and then President Trump will decrease the support to the Ukraine, and South Korea will follow the U.S. suit. So South Korea and also decrease the commitment to Ukraine.
By the way, joining the sanctions along with U.S. and other Western allies countries, was it more like U.S. or Western pressure, or it was South Korea's national interests, Professor? Over the course of Russia's war in Ukraine, South Korea has also joined the sanctions on the country. Was it more like national interests or Western pressure, U.S. pressure on the country?
So both sides, you know. So if we simply focus on economic interest, there is no strong economic relationship with South Korea with Ukraine. So there is no economic, I mean, in the short term, there is no economic interest for South Korea to support the Ukraine. But you have to think about the value side. So South Korea is a democratic state, and South Korea live in democratic value. So based on this democratic value, South Korea provide assistance to Ukraine. But in these days, if United States will not go with the democratic value anymore, then South Korea may reconsider its commitment toward Ukraine too.
I see. We have only 1 minute left, Professor. Can you tell us a number one threat for the region, for the Korean Peninsula, for your country? What would you, if I ask you to name one big major threat, what would you say? The most concerning one.
So to me, it's internal problem. It is internal problem. The bipolarization, the social bipolarization within East Asia is a big issue. It's a big issue in South Korea. It is a big issue in Japan. So rather than external issue, the internal issue is the number one issue in this area.
I see. Thank you very much for your time, Professor. Really appreciate your time and analysis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Evet, Seul Ulusal Üniversitesi'nden Siyaset Bilimi ve Uluslararası İlişkiler Bölümü öğretim üyesi Profesör Doktor Dong-Joon'la Güney Kore'yi konuştuk. Ülkede yaşanan son siyasi kriz ışığında biraz içeride ve dışarıda ülkenin karşı karşıya olduğu sorunları konuşmaya çalıştık. Önümüzdeki hafta yine farklı bir konukla karşınızda olmak dileğiyle. Hoşça kalın.